What's going on, everybody? Eric Lindquist at Stochastic here on the OddsShopper channel, coming to you with a Week 18 edition of NFL Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks. Hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell goes a long way for me on this video, goes a long way for you. That way you become a prize whenever great content is going live here at our little neck of the YouTube woods. We've made it, my friends. We have made it to the end of the NFL regular season. I'm not going anywhere. We're going to have the wild card weekend. We're going to have the divisional card. We're going to have the championship games, and we're going to have the Super Bowl. So that's at least 4 more videos that you are going to be guaranteed here in the NFL streets. Obviously, we're done with the primetime event ones. Probably won't do those videos. We'll do just the lead-ups coming into it. And we'll have NBA Lindy's going every single Monday through Friday. So don't you worry. Or Sweet Bippy. Plus, a lot of great stuff going on over at X. You can follow me at Eric Lindquist. Been some threads out into the for the NBA streets. Hopefully you appreciate those because I like to talk my process a little bit more over there. Here, I know, hey, let's get to the picks. Let's fire these off. So producer Jacob, he's on hand. He's ready to rock. We'll talk about Lindy 5-0, which you can get a head start on if you guys want to join the community. Start tailing me here today. Every single play that I have because, well, we don't have any locks on the card for Week 18. So much uncertainty. I'm going to try to talk through as many contract incentives, the milestones, everything that we have going in Week 18 is going to be a wild week. That's for sure. But chaos, I love it because that is when you can really make some money here. And we're going to do that here. Producer Jacob, without further ado, let's get to the picks. We're combining Saturday and Sunday together, and that starts with Cleveland, 19.5 points, 20.5, depending on what book you're looking at, going up against Baltimore. And yeah, they should be getting that many because Baltimore is really, really good and has things that they're continuing to play for, as opposed to on the other side of this one, not so much here. Now, AFC, it's the number 1 seed, the Chiefs. They're up there here, but Baltimore, they're 11-5. The Bills are locked into the 2 seed, but you have the Ravens that still need to, put the gas down and 5 passing yards here away for Lamar Jackson. They're going to be playing this one pretty straight up here, I think. And even if they weren't, you're talking about Dorian Thomas-Robinson. How much confidence has he inspired the last couple of weeks? I'm going to answer for you. None. There's no question about it. The guy could run a little bit at UCLA back in the day. Looked good in the preseason as a rookie last year, but then he got into the games, and despite that wet and wild, ridiculous San Francisco game that he actually won last season, he had a couple of terrible, horrible, no good, very bad starts. You get a Baltimore defense here on the other side. This team is going to be firing on all cylinders. And again, they want to be locking in that 3 seed because then you get to go up against the Chargers more than likely, potentially the Steelers, depending on how things pan out there between that 5 and 6 seed spot. There's going to be some news, though, based on the next game. But either way, Baltimore, because of the time that they are playing there early in the morning on Saturday or afternoon, I guess, you're going to see a straight up Baltimore team before every other team gets activated. So here you go. Baltimore laying 19.5. I'm actually comfortable with. What a time to be alive. And this one is probably the weirdest one that we have on the entire slate. Well, purely because, there's 2 of them, I suppose. There's technically a chance that Cincinnati still gets into the playoff mix. Now, it's going to take a lot. Specifically, it's going to take an absolute collapse, the likes of which this world's never seen before. And we're going to need Denver to lose as double-digit dogs, depending on what book you're looking at there, against Kansas City's backups. And you're going to need Miami to lose. However, Miami isn't going to be rolling out Tua. And because Cincinnati's playing here and because Pittsburgh's still jockeying for position, we should see a pretty competitive straight-up game. And 48.5 total, that's a lot larger than some of the other totals we're going to be talking about outside of course, the main event, the 1-seed shootout, the Detroit Lions and Minnesota Vikings. Skull, baby, skull. But Cincinnati, they're playing to keep this team intact. Chase Brown, I don't think he's going to end up playing in this one. He has not practiced all week. Waiting for that final practice report. I waited as long as I could on Friday afternoon here. It is currently 3:45 Eastern time, 12:45 on the West Coast. And I don't think we're going to be getting a lot of just concrete news on it. I bet he actually warms up with the intent to play. And again, Joe Burrow's trying to keep this team together. T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. You probably can't just use the franchise tag for the 84th year in a row and try to ask for things to work out in the end. So Cincinnati's going to have to pay somebody, and they're going to have to pay somebody pretty handsomely. I would prefer T. Higgins over Jamar Chase. That might be a hot take. But speaking of, Jamar Chase is at 7.5 receptions, minus 115. Now, it started to go up here throughout the week. It was at minus 105. I wish I had pulled the trigger there. But I do think he gets targeted ad nauseum. And Jaylen Warren, I do think in a game where you're expected to trail 2.5-point dogs. Again, they're not expected to trail. It's pretty neutral script. Jaylen Warren is at plus 220, currently best available. He's the better back between him and Najee Harris. I've said that all season long. It's just that Jaylen Warren had that hamstring injury that popped up at the beginning of the season, set him back about 4 or 5 weeks. But every single primetime game, every single major game, Jaylen Warren's outperformed Najee Harris. Just saying, it is what it is. So Jaylen Warren, I'm looking at the anytime touchdown, but haven't bet it yet. Let's get to the Sunday slate. So if you're joining me here now on Saturday and both of those games are done, action. Houston, they're getting 1.5 points going up against Tennessee. And what does Houston have to play for? Oh, just about nothing here. They're going to be the 4 seed no matter what. They cannot move up. They won the division, but they can't go up on the Ravens or the Bills or anything of that nature. So despite the fact that we are seeing, well, I mean, it just comes down to the Ravens need to win that game. And they play before Cincinnati, and then Cincinnati plays, or not Cincinnati, because Pittsburgh could win the division in that event. Here we go. Houston locked into the 4 seed. It's done. So how long those starters play, I don't really know. We'll say Joe Mixon's kind of interesting on how long they might actually have him out there, but he only needs 7 yards to get 1,000 rushing yards. So it's more of like give him 2 handoffs and get him out of the football game on bubble wrap. Because you're not really going anywhere without Joe Mixon. And he's going to have to play like God because the wide receiver core is decimated there in Houston. That's the team that most of these 5, 6, 7s want to be playing, that's for sure. But Tennessee, on the other side, Tony Pollard's got some interesting contract incentives too. I think he's kind of the first guy who stands out. 83 yards. 83 yards to make $250K, but running backs don't make like as much relative to other positions. So $250K is a huge slice of pie. Whereas if it were a quarterback, making $20 million, even still, $250K, I don't think anybody on planet Earth is saying no to. You surely would not hear me say no to $250K. So maybe Tony Pollard ends up activated in this one, but he sat out there in week 17. He also could get 2 touchdowns for another $200K, but that seems a little bit more unlikely with the 37 total. However, you've got a weird thing going on with quarterback, and Will Levis is going to start this game, but it sounds like they're also going to mix in Mason Rudolph this time. It's just going to be like a, hey, let's just go out and have some fun and throw it around the lot. As for right now, though, the only props available, Tony Pollard here on Friday. No, not Tony Pollard, sorry. Calvin Ridley sitting at 67.5. He's a guy that can get over 1,000 as well with like 60-plus receiving yards. So there you go. Oh, God. All of that headache just to say under 37 because I don't really trust scoring in this one. I think both teams offensively decimated. Davis Mills, not my favorite quarterback to be backing on the Houston side. And Will Levis is going to just be due for a stupid turnover even against second stringers there in Houston. Atlanta, technically something to play for, but they're going to be scoreboard watching, paying close attention to Tampa Bay, and you might not see this game go to its entirety, and that kind of keeps me away from a total that otherwise I think I would be okay taking the over. Now, Carolina, they're getting 8 going up against Atlanta, and Michael Penix, I mean, it's 2 games into his tenure. I think there's a couple of throws that he's been incredible with, and a couple of throws hasn't looked all that good with. I mean, you could describe a lot of quarterbacks that way, and obviously he's under a microscope because he ended up taking over for Kirk Cousins, and well, we've seen a lot of primetime games here. That one, the one against Washington was an absolute banger. The throw he made there on 4th down into a tight window, Kyle Pitts coming to life, that was weird. Kind of said that was a chance of happening. I didn't bet anything on it. I'm in shambles. But Carolina, you have Miles Sanders off the injury report. I think he gets a majority of the carries over Blackshear and over Boone, which is good because they had no semblance of a running game with Blackshear or Boone. That was my major concern. Talked about that last week, and that came to fruition. But you found Adam Thielen being effective. You're still trying to develop Bryce Young, Jalen Coker, a couple of these other young players on the offensive side. It's just that defensively, Atlanta should be able to do whatever they want. And I'm not a big first touchdown guy, but plus 280 on Caesars, that's a spicy meatball on the Atlanta side. I think for Bijan Robinson, he's minus 290 anytime touchdown on DK. And you do that, the adjustments on like who's the most likely touchdowns when you're breaking it out. It's obviously still Bijan Robinson on the Atlanta side. And I think that's just decent enough. But I repeat, if it doesn't happen in the first half, it's probably not happening, period. So I think you want to take advantage in a scenario where he has to be out on the field. So pay close attention to that one. First touchdown, I think, is a way better bet than the anytime touchdown, though, at these numbers with the game script of the Tampa Bay side in mind. Oh, let's get to that next. It's like your boy tried to stack these games in appropriate order. New Orleans taking on Tampa Bay. And here, my friends, we've got no Kendre Miller. We have Alvin Kamara doubtful. We have Chris Olave questionable in the injury report. I hate everything. Why are we having to deal with that? But the major thing that exists is the highest receiving prop of the entire season exists on the Tampa Bay side. Now, one, there's no Marshawn Lattimore, so there's less ejection risk. And two, who am I talking about? Well, of course, it is Mike Evans. Mike Evans has gone on this crazy bender, looking at like basically a decade of 1,000-yard plus seasons. Now, the hamstring injury has limited him to a limited amount of games this season, just 13 he's played so far, but he needs 85 yards to get over 1,000 yet again this season. And it was quoted by Baker Mayfield saying that if we end up winning this football game, Mike Evans is going to get that record. Now, it is just one of those things where the books are not unaware of these facts either. You're not breaking any kind of news by knowing these milestones. Again, you have to notice I'm leaning a lot more of these plays than normal purely because there's so much speculation that goes into it, and we're waiting for other props that might be more fruitful for us coming out later down the line. Only like 2 or 3 that are available in games, whereas when we know that they're straight up and you're projecting a normal workload for everybody down the line, the books are going to be more comfortable rolling them out. But they're very, very careful this time of season because people like me, people like you watching this program, I'm sure too, are hawking, are always paying attention, trying to find those edges. There's a lot of people who have 100+ yards for Mike Evans on the card already this week. I see it on X. I see it everywhere, and it's making me a little bit nauseous because, yes, I like Mike Evans against New Orleans at a game Tampa Bay needs to win to clinch the division, clinch a playoff berth as well, and Atlanta could slide in with a loss or some kind of apocalyptic scenario here for Tampa Bay. But I want to just throw a little caution out there. It's still 15 yards above where he needs to get for the 1,000-yard mark. So it's really hard for me to just sit here and say that that's a slam dunk bet when 102.5 is starting to be the prevailing numbers. And I'm starting to see that number. It's come up from that 89, 90-yard marker. Everybody is on this play for a number that I'm not positive is all that positive EVs. So Mike Evans, I'm going to just make it a lean in the corner. Do with it what you will. Man, went on a little bit of a rant there. Let's talk Mitchell Trubisky and the Buffalo Bills taking on New England. New England obviously has more to play for with Drake May in development, and Buffalo, well, they're locked into the 2 seed here. There's no way that the Ravens can catch them. They're 11-5. Bills are 13-3. But they can't catch the Chiefs either, so this is kind of just that purgatory spot where it's going to be a lot of second stringers. You might see a quarter of Josh Allen. You might see all of the starters for a quarter. If you see a quarter of Josh Allen, you're probably going to see a quarter of all the starters. But I will say, I think New England's at least interesting here in this spot, getting the 3 against the backups. Now, the backups, the running back position, pretty decent there for Buffalo, but I don't think that offensive line, they're going to throw anybody out there that's worth their weight in salt for any duration of time unless Josh Allen is just, out there as well in that first quarter. And you could see Josh Allen go out and mow down New England in a first quarter trying to stamp his MVP candidacy, but I doubt it. We're going to see primarily Mitchell Trubisky in this one. And Drake May, say what you want. I think he's proven himself as a NFL-worthy caliber player, and I think he's only going to continue to get better. New England needs to find wide receivers in the draft. I mean, last season's draft, there were 1 million of them, and they couldn't find a couple. We're still rolling out Demario Douglas on a day-to-day basis, this booty character. I mean, come on now. Come on. Find Drake May some weapons in the offseason. Hunter Henry ain't all that in a bag of potato chips. So I'm still going to take New England here, getting 3. If it were something where we're 2.5, stay away. I would be more inclined to take the money line in that scenario. Jacksonville at Indy, and there's not much to say. Jacksonville, 5-point dogs, they should be. There's no way that Mac Jones is going to be getting my money in week 18. There's just no way. I cannot take the 5 here, but I think Indy's really, really dicey because we don't have any news on Jonathan Taylor sitting yet. Maybe he plays, maybe there's something in his contract that isn't known, or maybe there's something that we just aren't seeing here, but not on the injury report whatsoever. He's practiced in full all week. And I do think that there's a world where, they're going to compare him to some of the other running backs, but considering he got paid, he came off of 32 carries and the most embarrassing loss I've ever seen against the Giants and Drew Lock last week. I think we're going to see either JT rest, Michael Pittman rest. You could see Josh Downs rest, but in the event that Josh Downs is in the event that you get Alec Pearson, who's questionable because he did get hit in the head that last time out, but sounds as though he's going to be okay. So just pay close attention to that. He played against the Giants there, was out for week 16, but I think we're going to see a Joe Flacco masterclass in a spot where it's a 43.5 total purely because of him. It's in a dome, so it's not outdoors in the winter. And we have an opportunity for Joe Flacco to go completely nutties. Fire that up if we get some props and JT is active. If he's not, I'd probably just stay away from this game entirely. First week, $10, friends. First month, $25. What am I talking about? Well, it's the premium Discord at OddsShopper Tails. Yes, Tails by OddsShopper, friends. You go to the link below. You sign up for Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks. I repeat, you're watching Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks. Why don't you sign up for Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks? If you want to jump into the Discord, instead of $20, which it normally is for your first, well, for any week, and $50 for a month, it becomes $10 for your first week or $25 for your first month when you use code Lindy50. Come talk the NBA, come talk the NFL, and of course, starting in March, talk the MLB. We're seeing a lot of news starting to come in on the MLB. Hey, Sung Kim, going to be a Dodger. I mean, the Dodgers have everybody. What a time to be alive. But Lindy50 down at the link below. Would love to see you there. Alrighty, y'all, back to the picks. Washington laying the 6, going up against Dallas here. Dallas getting the 6, that is. And I don't know what we see from the Rico Dowdles of the world, from some of these like ancillary pieces that have still been starters routinely for this Dallas team. But I will say, you got to be paying close attention to this one. I think Zach Ertz's receptions ladder is at least interesting, though, because we have some contract incentives that exist for him. I think you've got 9 catches to get $250K for him, because he's at 61 catches. If he gets to 70, he gets a bonus. 90 more receiving yards to get another $250. I think the reception's a little bit more interesting, though, because Dallas, that secondary, not exactly intact. They're dinged up, and well, Dallas not exactly going out. They did play for a lot of pride, though, last time out against Tampa Bay. Less pride against Philly, as Philly ran them over despite no Jalen Hurts, and we had Kenny Pickett getting pushed. What are you actually doing, Philly? What are you actually freaking doing? Oh, we'll talk about that here next, too. We've got ourselves Zach Ertz reception ladder. That's going to be a lean for me. Again, needs 9 for that milestone. 90-plus receiving yards, I think a little bit more unlikely between the two. And the Giants coming off of a ridiculous win against Indy, ruining their chance at the number 1 seed. Nicely done, guys. Nicely done. But again, Drew Lock's out there playing for his job. Good luck. Yeah, he's got to be a hated guy there in New York. But taking on Philly just put the gauntlet down against Dallas, and even with Kenny Pickett at the helm, it was just fine here. As for what you're going to get out of Philly here this time around, well, it could just be Kenny Pickett for a little bit more, but he didn't participate in practice on Thursday. And Jalen Hurts continuing to be out here with a concussion. I think you see Tanner McKee end up being the starter here. Now, Tanner McKee, I had to do a little bit of looking up on, other than, he threw that first career touchdown there to A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown chucks it in the stance. Shout out that guy in Philly. I mean, that's the first nice thing I've ever seen happen in Philadelphia. But anyway, we're going to talk Giants here, where Drew Lock, he doesn't care about your seating, where you're going to get your draft pick as a Giants fan. He really doesn't. And I think Malik Neighbors doesn't care either, but Malik Neighbors is kind of in an interesting back and forth. And this all comes down to like what you think matters to a football player. It's the final game of the season, and I'm sure he wants to go into his postseason healthy, well, he's not playing in the postseason, but wants to go into his offseason healthy. I think you're going to see Malik Neighbors go out and actually push to be on the field for quite a bit longer than you might expect in this kind of a scenario, because Brock Bowers is coming up later in this program, and we're going to discuss him. They've got a back and forth for the rookie receptions leader of all time. Now, Puka Nacua just said it, and Puka Nacua is about to get knocked down here in that scenario, because you've got a back and forth battle between these two, and it comes down to, like, again, what you think matters to the guys. But 108 receptions for Brock Bowers, 104 for Neighbors. Neighbors has a chance to go for 12 balls, 14 balls, try to get targeted for little out routes, but I don't think there's any value right now on that looking in the marketplace. He's at 7.5 receptions. Seems pretty hefty to me, and maybe they just pack it in if he's not getting open early here against Philly in that secondary that, and Philly has nothing to play for. They're not rolling Saquon Barkley out this week, and they're starting Tanner McKee. But Malik Neighbors anytime touchdowns at plus 185. Yeah, Drew Lock's out there. He's still going to sling it to the best player on the field. That's what we saw last week. That should be his source of relief here in this spot, plus 185. I'm interested for a small, a little bit underneath a half unit play. Chicago at Green Bay, a nicely done Green Bay. Really nice job running into the back of the Minnesota Vikings offensive line. As a Vikings fan, I enjoyed it last time out, but now you're going to see Green Bay in a game where there is a little bit of jockeying that can happen with Washington, so pay close attention to the Washington game going side by side with this one. Discuss that with Dallas. You want to be facing Tampa Bay. You want to be facing Philadelphia. There's just no way that I would want to be playing the Minnesota. Well, whoever ends up getting the 1 seed, we'll put it that way. I'm cheering for Minnesota, obviously, but the 1 seed, they're going to be sitting out for this one. The 2 seed locked in. Yeah, it's going to be some jockeying for position that you really need to do if you're Green Bay trying to avoid some stuff. So I think they're going to play it straight up for the most part. And Josh Jacobs is at 56.5 rushing yards. This is a low number for a guy that even last week was getting a ton of carries and was pretty efficient against the best rushing defense in the NFL, the Minnesota Vikings, nearly 4 yards a carry. That kind of is the way that LaFleur wants to play these games, and nobody makes me bleed my own blood, LaFleur. Effing Chuck Norris. Josh Jacobs over 56.5 rushing yards. Just going to be a lean for now. Let's get into the Sunday afternoon, shall we? We got Seattle at LA, and LA locked themselves into the NFC West here, so cool. Cool. Again, you want to be playing the Rams. You want to be playing Tampa Bay. You really don't want to be playing Philly. That is the way that I look at it. We'll see how these other teams kind of move it around, but health above all, I suppose. But Seattle, we got Jackson Smith and Jigba at 5.5 receptions. This could be a spot where DK Metcalf, yeah, you might want him to be out there. You might want him to have a little bit of fun himself, go out and try to beat up on a second string group of secondary guys, but Jackson Smith and Jigba, he's the guy who's had a really fantastic season here for Seattle. Really came on strong in the second half of the year, just fell a little bit short, and I think that was more of the shortcomings of this defense and the inability to stop the run at times. Some injuries, Kenneth Walker not being back there, although Zach Charbonnet showed he has a little bit of juice in the tank. Jackson Smith and Jigba, though, had 96 receptions. I got to think he wants to get himself over that 100 mark. He's already at 1,100 yards, so you don't have to think about that one too much, but I do look at the receptions. I think it's at least interesting to think he'd go for 5, 6, 7 catches here. Jackson Smith and Jigba, going to make that the lean here at minus 135. No interest in betting this game whatsoever. Oh, yeah. And Jimmy Garoppolo, going to be starting for the Rams. Welcome to Week 18. Miami at New York. MetLife Stadium, one more time for the old Gipper. Could be Aaron Rodgers' final football game, and yet I'm more interested in the under here. Looks like the weather is actually going to be okay there, but Miami, once again, this is going to be very different than taking on Cleveland last week for them. Technically, Miami does have a path to the playoffs. They would be the priority team if they win this one over Cincinnati. So Cincinnati needs Miami to lose and then the Broncos to lose, which we'll talk up later. Oh boy, got a kind of a hot take there in that one, but we are certainly going to see an interesting deal. Tua, he's doubtful for this one. I don't think there's a world that he ends up playing in this football game, even if Cincinnati were to lose or anything there, because it's all reliant on what's going on at the same time, Kansas City at Denver. So maybe Tua's like on the sideline and they roll him out in the second half, but that just seems stupid. You would either play him or you wouldn't. So I think we see for a second straight week, Snoop Huntley. Tyler Huntley at the helm. Looked okay, 22 for 26 last week. I mean, that's really good completion percentage. Had the tutty, had a number of different nice rushes, 7 for 52 and a tutty in that direction. That's kind of been Tyler Huntley's MO going back to the Baltimore days. But in this specific spot, under 38.5, the Jets defense been pitiful, but Miami's defense at least serviceable. And I think for at least a half, we see this game played straight up. Plus Aaron Rodgers, maybe playing for a job. Don't think it matters based on what we saw against Buffalo. Hot take time. Kansas City at Denver. Denver, they need to win this football game if Cincinnati wins. If not, they might have a chance where this game is almost completely meaningless, although they play at the same time as Miami, so expect it to be straight up. And Bo Nix, it's been a little bit hot and cold. Yes, no, back and forth here the last few. At Cincinnati, at LAC, I think he's going to be happy to go back to Mile High Stadium and having people cheering for him. 25 tutties, 12 interceptions here on the season, and 24 for 31. Had a couple of massive plays to Marvin Mims against Cincinnati. That was exciting, but the collapse in the second half to the Chargers has them having to play this game straight up, which, can be a benefit to some teams. be a benefit to some teams. You still have something to play for. You still go through your routine, and you're ready to rock during the wild card weekend next weekend. But I do think Kansas City is going to be way more competitive than other people think here in this spot. And the two main reasons. One, Carson Wentz, despite what you want to think about him as a quarterback, you could say he sucks. You could say whatever. He is a way above average backup in the National Football League. He has Andy Reid as his head coach. This is still going to be a game plan with everything that's institutionalized there in Kansas City that should be favorable for a quarterback, because it has been for year in, year out for the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. But I think the other major reason is Hollywood Brown. How do they handle him here in this spot? He has played a couple of snaps. We're seeing some snaps move up. I think you want to get him some reps. You want him on the field there more, and more, so you can have him ramped up, full go potentially for the playoffs. He had played less than 50% of snaps the first two, and really only 14 routes and freaking caught 7 balls, or 8 targets, 5 balls there in that first game against Houston. Against Pittsburgh, 4 catches on 7 targets there. I think you want to keep that snap count rising there. So I think even on the road in Denver, I mean, it's ironic. My mind always goes back to Patrick Mahomes' first start in the NFL was a week 17, back when they only had 16 games. And that was against Denver in Mile High. And I think Carson Wentz, this is a spot for him not to just play for a job, but show some other front offices that he's got some juice left in the tank. I think Kansas City is going to be way more competitive, and sure, Spagnuolo's defense is still going to look a little bit different here playing backups. I don't think we see Travis Kelce. I don't think we see a lot of the ancillary pieces. Maybe we see a little bit of Juju Smith-Schuster, a little bit of DeAndre Hopkins, but for the most part, I still think Kansas City way more competitive than 11 points, which is currently available over at BetMGM at -110. Again, some books have this at 9. I like getting 11 points and just living to tell the tale. I have a tough time with this one until we know neighbors, and that's kind of what I'm going to put into the box, because again, what's in the box? We've got ourselves Vegas taking on the Chargers in Vegas, and Vegas has nothing really to play for. They're going to roll out Aiden O'Connell. They're going to continue to do things to develop towards the future, and the future is Brock Bowers. Now, the Chargers, not a lot that could go down really for them in terms of their playoff positioning. There's a tiny bit that exists still where it can kind of like jostle as far as like where their playoff positioning is. I still think they play this game somewhat straight up, but I think Brock Bowers is the most interesting play from this game in some capacity. I said it before, if you missed it, Malik Neighbors, 4 catches behind Brock Bowers right now. Maybe he sets the table. Maybe he goes all the way in, goes for 10, 12 catches, but that's going to kind of dictate what I want to do with Brock Bowers, because I think you want to put him in bubble wrap. The guy is a Pro Bowl caliber freaking tight end right from the get-go. He's been the best tight end in football this season. Him and Trey McBride 1-2. And I think you just want to put him on ice after he accomplishes this rookie record. They're both going to pass Nakua, but then what happens after that? I think it's going to dictate what happens. Like, it's going to dictate what I do here, or if anything, based on Neighbors. So I'm going to either say over or under receptions based on Neighbors and how he does in that early window of games. You're going to see a lot of movement, I think, in this market based on how that goes. For what it's worth, I think Brock Bowers is a pretty decent favorite to still get that rookie record. Might be leaning towards the under if you want to know one or the other. But San Francisco at Arizona up next here. Kyler Murray. How long is he going to be in for this football game? I don't know. All I know is that Brock Purdy, I hope that elbow's okay. As an Iowa State guy, alma mater, shout out. We're a college football school until we're a college basketball school, which is kind of the way things have gone this season. Brock Purdy doubtful to be playing. Josh Dobbs going to be getting to start against his former team here in Arizona. I think that that's kind of exciting. I always like those kind of conversation pieces. Marvin Harrison, only 57 catches, 822 yards. He's so far away from the milestones here as a rookie. I would call it a disappointing rookie season, although still finds ways into the box. 7 touchdowns through the air on the season. That is pretty darn decent still. So Marvin Harrison, disappointing season. Maybe get your jersey stuff figured out before it starts and people start hating on you. Real ones know what I'm talking about. But in this spot, friends, the last game before we get to the main event, San Francisco at Arizona, I think Kyler Murray probably gets put on ice here as well. This is a contract that, I mean, he didn't play as well as he should have at times this season. James Conner, a huge part of what Arizona's success was at times, but defensively, just not enough juice. Kyler Murray, not enough juice to go out and win some specific football games where they really needed him to do more with his legs, do a little bit more through the air, get Trey McBride in the end zone. And hey, Trey McBride finally in the end zone there in week 17. Congratulations to him. I'm sure that monkey off the back feels good. But in this spot, Kyler Murray under 1.5 touchdowns is available inside of -135. I did bet that. -134, Bet Rivers, go. Just bet that. Welcome to the main event. Finally, a game. We don't have to talk about contracts or milestones. It is straight up for the 1 seed in the NFC, which is huge because then you have 2 games at home to get to the Super Bowl. And as a Vikings fan, I've never seen a Super Bowl in my lifetime. It's insane to say. I've seen heartache. I've seen pain. I've seen Brett Favre in a Vikings jersey throwing it over to Darren. I mean, I just can't even. I can't even. So many NFC championship heartbreaks. The Dirty Bird out there in 99 getting completely murdered in Philly. That Brett Favre interception still haunts my dreams. Anyway, this is for the 1 seed. It's not an elimination game per se, but the loser goes down to the 5 seed. I think you know that by now. Let's start breaking this one down. Defensively, we still see a majority of these defensive starters out on the Detroit side. And I think that that's going to be the big telling part of this football game is Minnesota completely healthy. Detroit a little bit decimated on the defensive side, but Jared Goff has been so good that it is hard for me to go in there and do anything other than say, hey, if I had to lean towards anything, I would actually be leaning towards Jared Goff if this were to be inside of 3. And money is coming in on the Minnesota side pretty heavily, getting 3 points. I think that just tells you how straight up these two teams are. And defensively, Minnesota can really stop the run. David Montgomery, though, I don't know if you would have been long for this game anyway. It's definitely more of a Jahmyr Gibbs, stretch the field in the passing game, in addition to what he brings, the juice he has in the running game. More of an outside cut runner, a little bit less of the inside bulldozer like David Montgomery. I think this just sets up well to have him out there for all of your snaps. Craig Reynolds, you're going to be sent to the Shadow Realm. But coming off of week 17, where they played straight up when I did not expect that, I know that you said it and you heard it, but hey, at least we heard after the fact that Campbell was struggling with the fact that, hey, do I play my guys straight up in the entire game? But that's what they did against San Francisco. They win that one. They've already set every record you could possibly ask for there in Detroit. But I think the story of this game, outside of the defensive starters that are hurt for Detroit, is what happens in both of these passing games. Because I think the secondaries definitely got exposed to some extent over the course of the last few weeks. Yes, you've got a number of Pro Bowlers now with Branch and the likening over on the Detroit side, but still Minnesota with Justin Jefferson, Minnesota with Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson playing all the snaps now at tight end. And this play by Sam Darnold is out of control. I think my key way of going about this one is going to be something in the alternate passing lines for Goff and Sam Darnold. I think there's a single game parlay lingering somewhere. If you want to know exactly what I bet, hit me up on X. Everybody's going to be talking about this game. Everybody's going to be watching this game. I think the numbers are really hard to get after right now, but at 279.5 over on Bet365, damn good fun. I think we have a way to get 300 plus at around even money for both of these passers. Combine it with something and really look at hey, if you see a dynamic game from one of these two, you're going to win money. And I think that that's what we're going to see. We're going to see Goff or we're going to see Sam Darnold completely smash, and you're going to want to have a piece of that pie. And that does it for the final regular season edition of NFL Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks. You know what to do. Go to that comment section below. Let me know your favorite plays that exist on the board for Week 18. Going to be a wild one. Talk through a ton of scenarios. Hell, 35 minutes. I made it. All right, 50% off. Lindy50 at the link below. Lots more bets to come. That is for sure. I'm going to be wearing my Vikings apparel, going completely nuts on Sunday. That is for sure. You are too, right? Good luck to One Pride as well. I appreciate you guys. I love watching the back and forth all season in the NFC North. Best division in the NFL. Thank you, producer Jacob, as always, for a great regular season. Going to be a lot easier to manage these NFL videos here going forward. But playoff football, nothing could be better than Do You Like My Sweater? Let's get out of here. I'm Eric Lindquist. Follow me at Eric Lindquist over on X. Best of luck in the NFL streets on Saturday and Sunday for Week 18.